Hello, today I'm going to show you how to generate a landscape in Blender using satellite depth data, which we'll process in QGIS. So the first step is, once we've got QGIS open, is go to Plugins, Manage and Install Plugins, and we want to make sure that we have Quick Map Services QMS installed. So we can do that by searching QMS here, and where it says reinstall plugin here for me, it should say install for you. What should happen then is that this window will appear that says search QMS at the top. If not, we can right click anywhere on the top and make sure we have search QMS panel selected. While we're here also, we want to make sure we have advanced digitizing panel selected and the advanced digitizing toolbar selected, which we're going to use a bit later. Then in QMS we want to search Google Satellite. Once that comes up, we're going to add it to our project. So this is the Google Satellite data for the whole world. It's quite high resolution, which means it's great for when we want to quickly texture or color a landscape. However, if you need the texture of your landscape to be of a specific date or time, then obviously you will need to use a different data set. So today we're going to be looking at an area near the Gaza border in Israel, and we will type in the coordinates, the latitude longitude coordinates of our site here, and it's going to give us this crosshair that tells us that this is the exact location of our site. What we want to do then, based on this coordinate, is to pick a CRS that is appropriate, and we're going to search for CRS of Israel. This one, which is Israel Grid 05112, and it has the EPSG 6991. We'll apply that. Now we've set the CRS of our project to that. What we want to do is to download the satellite depth data that we're going to then process. So you can get this data from several different sources, as well as a plugin in QGIS, which I will link to. However, as a basis, I like to use data from the ALOS satellite, which gives a 30-meter resolution of the whole world, and it's a very clean data set. It doesn't have clouds and things like that, so it's able to be processed basically for any location. So to get this data, we're going to search ALOS DSM, and then we want this 30-meter world data set. And then we're going to scroll down on this web page to where it says dataset is downloadable from the following, just here. You will need to register for the service, although it is then free to access the data. So we will click here. This is where if you weren't already logged in, you would be prompted to log in, and then you would be able to access this web page. So our site is in this coordinate, and then here, and then it is here. So we're going to click download on this, and then once complete, what we're going to want to do is to basically unzip that, and then we will get this, which is a series of different pieces of data. What we're going to want to use today is the part of data, the data set that has underscore DSM. Really simply just drag that in, and we can see if I type in the coordinates again that our site is well within this DSM data we've downloaded. If your site is in the middle, you might need to download and add in two separate tiles and merge them. Or if you want a really large area, you might merge them as well. However, if you're generating a really large area of landscape, then you might have issues following this tutorial precisely. But you should be able to find online someone that has a workflow which optimizes and compresses the data slightly. So now that we have this DSM loaded in, the first thing we're going to want to do is reproject this data so it's in the CRS of our project. So for this we will go to raster, projections, warp reproject, and we're going to specify that the target CRS is going to be our project CRS. We'll say in the advanced parameters that we want int 16, and then we're going to save this file. So we're going to save this as DSM reproject in a folder. So we'll save here, and then we will run this process. So now we have this new reprojected layer inside of our project. It should look identical to the original. Some of the values might have changed, but this shouldn't matter too much. So now we need to use the advanced digitizing tools to create an area that we want our landscape to be, which is smaller than this quite large area here. So to do that, we need to add a new shapefile. So I'm going to add a shapefile here. I'm going to call it mask. I'm going to make it the project CRS, and I'm going to tell it that it's going to be a polygon. We will create a new layer. So now in this mask layer, what we can do is we can edit it. We can click that we're going to add a polygon. We're going to say that we want to use the advanced digitizing tools. We're going to make sure that we have snapping onto 90, 180, 270, and 360. So that's like right angles basically. And then we're going to, in this drop down, say we're going to want a rectangle from 3 points. So this advanced digitizing tools allows us to be quite precise about the size and kind of like the angle of the shape that we create our landscape to be. This is quite important in Blender, just to know how big our landscape is, but also it's if we wanted to use this for Unreal Engine, there is like a maximum landscape size and also some preferred landscape sizes, which is in the Unreal Engine landscape guide that I will, it's a text document that I'll send a link to below. But I believe that the maximum that we can have is 8,129 meters. So that's the area that I'm going to make for this tutorial. So what we need to do is we select our first point. Don't worry about being too precise. We can actually move this shape later. Then we want to tell it that we want it to be 8,129 meters, which is the length I just said. If we click enter, it will lock. And then when we go back to the window here, you can see that it's restricted us to this area away, this length, away from our point, as if it's the radius of a circle. And also it's trying to get us to lock to 90 degrees. So it's really easy to then just like draw a rectangle here where one of the faces is exactly perpendicular to north. So we do that once, and then we type it again. Then for this one, where we're drawing kind of like the edge of the shape, we're going to want to, instead of left clicking, right click, and then that will finish the shape. Call it 111. Make sure that that layer is on top. Then if we click this icon here, it's going to let us actually like just move this shape around, so we can move it to an area where we know that our site is quite central. Once we have this, we're going to have to do something which seems slightly strange, but I frequently using this tool, and then I try to use it as a mask for my DSM later, encounter issues. So what I found is that if I go into vector geometry tools and check validity, which will basically check that the geometry is valid, save to a file, mask valid, and let it run this process. What will happen is it will basically just generate a new mask layer that says mask valid and some other invalid and kind of like error outputs, which we don't need anymore. But these this now should be like really easy. This should work well now for us to use it as a mask to clip out of our DSM. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to raster, extraction, clip by mask layer. We're simply going to say that that's our mask layer. That's all we really need to do, and then save to a temporary file. We're just going to call it DSM reprojected clipped. And then run this process, close, and what we should have here is a set of geometry that is nearly the same size as our mask. And that's great. This is what we're going to use in Blender to create the topography. But while we're in QGIS, what we're also going to do is generate the image texture. So like the satellite color for this piece of landscape. So for that, we're going to go to our Google satellite layer. We're going to click export, save as. We're just going to bring this up. We're going to select rendered image, deselect create VRT, go into the folder where we're saving all of our other elements, and make sure it is the project CRS. When it says calculate from, we're going to select layer. We're going to use the mask that we've used for the DSM, and then here we're going to put in some numbers. So we're going to put in 4 and 4 here. Actually, are we? Or we're going to put in 2. Yeah, we're going to put in 2 and 2 to generate columns here that are kind of like columns and rows which are kind of close to a 4K resolution. We'll click OK. This will run and that will be generated. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up Blender, and we're going to delete these things. We're going to go to Preferences, then we're going to Add-ons, and we're going to search Blender GIS, which is here. We're just going to make sure that that is installed and enabled. Then that will give us this option after object that says GIS. We're going to click Import Georeference Raster, the reprojected and clipped DSM that we got earlier. Then from this drop down menu we want it to be DM raw data build. What this is going to do is it's going to create a on each pixel and then connect them, meaning that effectively all of the data that's in the DSM is going to be directly translated to geometry. What I normally do here is search the EPSG, so we'll go here, search, and then we'll go 6991, enter, and then that's our CRS, and then we'll click import and zoom out, and this is our terrain. So this example produces a very flat topography, but this is actually what it is in this case. But if you're in a more hilly landscape, you will get more hills. And as you can see here, there's all of these vertices that are connected on to different points. So if you click Shade Smooth, right click Shade Smooth, that'll give us kind of a nicer smoothed out result. So now our last step is that we need to add a texture. So we'll go into Shader Editor, create a new texture, call it Landscape, and we will add in an image texture here. So we'll drag it off and click Image Texture. The satellite image that we brought out of QGIS, and we'll plug that in there. Now, if you go to a rendered view, you'll see that you actually aren't seeing anything right now, and that's because we haven't unwrapped the UVs of the satellite. So that's really easy to do. Just tab to go into edit mode. Make sure you've hit A, so all of the geometry is selected. Then go UV unwrap. And then there you have it. Your landscape is textured. What we can do is a little check. So if we look for details of the landscape, such as this kind of path riverbed valley type thing here. We're just gonna switch between the views and make sure that these kind of like these geometries seem to line up with what the satellite is saying, just as a check that everything is good. And there you have it. You have your textured landscape which you've generated from satellite data. So you might want to also check that the landscape is kind of like the right size, the right length. Sometimes there's some image issues with some CRS that they don't translate exactly correctly. But you can do a little check in QGIS, a check using the measure tool in Blender, and scale accordingly. Also, because this is a DSM and not a DEM, what we actually have here is following the top of the height of the landscape, between the landscape and the satellite. So often, if there's a building between the actual surface of the Earth and the satellite, what we're actually getting, and that's really clear here on top of this building, is what we're actually getting is the distance between the top of the building and the satellite. So here we get these kind of like little funny bumps where there are buildings. That's because this is a DSM. So what you can do here is you can smooth these areas out. I won't show in this tutorial, but you can use something called lapellation smoothing, and you can set it to only smooth out these vertices where there are buildings that you can clearly see from the satellite. And that should kind of like smooth out the data and make it more representative of the actual surface of the Earth, which is likely what you want here. I hope this was informative and helpful, and thanks for watching.